All right, so you're here because all this talk about President Trump and national emergency at the border has got you curious, huh?
Yeah, it's been quite the news cycle
Right.
lately.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And we've got a lot to unpack here. I mean, we've got this official White House proclamation, right?
Right.
Then we've got some news clips, some social media posts, lots to dig into. So our mission today is to kind of cut through all that noise and get to the bottom of this.
I like it.
What happened? Why does it matter? What does it even mean? Right?
Yeah, all the big questions.
All the big questions. Okay, so let's jump right in. Let's start with that White House proclamation.
Mm-hmm.
And wow, they did not hold back on the language.
No, they did not.
America's sovereignty is under attack, invasion, grave threat. I mean, this thing reads like an action movie script.
Well, yeah, and I think that's deliberate, right? They're trying to signal just how serious they consider this situation to be.
Yeah, it's like a DEFCON 1 kind of vibe.
Exactly. They want to hit that alarm bell loud and clear.
And they're not just talking about one specific problem either. This proclamation lists everything, right? Cartels, criminal gangs, terrorists, traffickers, unvetted military-age males, even narcotics. It's like they're saying illegal immigration is the root of all evil.
Right, and by lumping all these issues together, they're building a case for a pretty extreme response.
And it's not just like changing a policy or two here.
Yeah.
They're invoking the National Emergencies Act, which gives the president a whole lot more power, potentially even bypassing Congress.
Yeah, think of it this way. The president has a toolbox, right?
Hmm.
And the National Emergencies Act gives them a whole bunch of new tools that they can use without anyone else's permission.
Okay, so some serious tools.
Some serious tools, yeah.
And speaking of serious tools, we have a clip from one of Trump's Rumble videos. And let me tell you, he does not mince words. He literally shouts it, "I will declare a national emergency at our southern border."
Oh, yeah, classic Trump. Right to the point, no messing around.
Definitely gets your attention.
Yeah.
And it's very much in line with his whole Make America Great Again theme, right?
Absolutely. It's about strength. It's about taking charge. It's about putting America first.
So how does this all translate into action? What are they actually going to do?
Well, the proclamation outlines some pretty specific steps. They're talking about deploying troops, building more barriers, ramping up border patrol,
Right.
basically putting border security above everything else.
So it's like locking things down.
Pretty much. And to do that, they're citing specific legal justifications too, certain sections of the U.S. Code.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. Like
Yeah.
a Title 10, Section 284 or something?
That's the one. That one gives the president a lot of leeway to use the military during national emergencies.
Oh, wait, but hold on a sec. Why is that code so controversial in this situation?
Well, think of it this way. The National Emergencies Act was meant for like sudden, unexpected crises, right? Like a natural disaster or a terrorist attack.
Right.
But using it for a long-standing issue like immigration is kind of like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut.
Okay, I can see that.
It raises questions about whether the president is overstepping his authority and setting a dangerous precedent.
So it's not just about whether there's a problem at the border. It's about who gets to decide what to do about it.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting legally. But I think maybe we'll save that for part 2.
Yeah, good idea. Let's
Uh-huh.
not get too ahead of ourselves.
So, things getting legally interesting.
Exactly. It's like suddenly the whole country's turned into a courtroom drama.
Haha. I like
That
that.
we're all just waiting for the judge to rule. Like, you can't just drop a bomb like this national emergency thing and expect everyone to be like, oh, okay, sure, Mr. President.
Well, that's where the checks and balances come in, right? Congress is supposed to be able to like step in and say, hold on a minute.
So, like, Congress is the referee.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
They can blow the whistle on the president's emergency powers.
But they can't just do that, like, automatically. Right?
No. It takes a lot to overrule a call like this. They'd need a supermajority vote in both the House and the Senate.
And even then.
And even then, the president could just veto it.
So even if, like, most of Congress thinks this is a bad idea,
Yeah.
they might not be able to stop it.
That's the worry. And that's why some people are saying this whole thing is executive overreach, going way beyond what those emergency powers were meant for.
So are there, like, rules about what counts as a national emergency?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's what the courts are going to have to figure out.
So we're talking lawsuits.
Oh, yeah. Tons of them already. And this could drag on for years, Appeals, Supreme Court, the whole 9 yards.
Talk about a long-running TV show.
Haha, exactly. So we've got Congress, we've got the courts. What about Mexico, though?
Yeah, I was just thinking that. They can't be too happy about this.
No, not at all. I mean, the U.S. Mexico relationship is complicated, right? We've got trade, security, cultural ties, and then you've got millions of people whose lives literally straddle the border.
It's like one big tangled mess.
And this declaration just throws a whole new wrench into it.
So what kind of ripple effects are we talking about?
Well, practically speaking, we're already seeing longer wait times at border crossings. Businesses that rely on cross-border trade are getting hit hard.
Mm.
Families are getting separated. It's a mess.
And that's just the start, right?
Yeah. The bigger worry is what this does to the long-term relationship. You know, the trust and cooperation we need to solve problems together.
So it's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline.
Pretty much. And speaking of throwing fuel on the fire, you included some sources that show how this whole thing is playing out online.
Oh, yeah. The internet's been a real circus lately.
It has, hasn't it? And some of it's pretty wild, like this clip here. But remember, we're just analyzing the information, not endorsing it.
Right, of course.
Okay, so the title is Breaking National Security Alert. General Michael Flynn warns that Obama and John Brennan are still running an illegal intelligence sabotage operation inside the federal government, criminally working against DJT's administration and you.
Whoa, okay, that took a turn.
Yeah, and that's how these things work, right? They grab your attention, they play on your fears, and they twist the facts to fit their narrative.
It's like a minefield out there. How do we even know what to believe anymore?
Well, that's the challenge, isn't it? But here's the thing. Questioning is good. Skepticism is healthy. We shouldn't just accept everything we see at face value.
So it's all about being a critical thinker.
Exactly. You got to chew on the information, see if it makes sense. Check the sources. Who's saying this? What's their agenda? Do they have any evidence?
It's like detective work.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got this whole legal battle brewing, potential international fallout, and a whole lot of craziness online.
Yeah.
What's the average person supposed to do with all this?
It's overwhelming for sure. But here's what I think is important. This whole thing has exposed some really deep divisions in our country, right? Not just about immigration, but about power, about government, about what it means to be American.
Big questions.
Huge questions, and there are no easy answers.
So besides, hiding under the covers, what can we do?
Well, we can stay informed, right? Seek out reliable sources, have those tough conversations with people who see things differently, and hold our elected officials accountable.
Okay, so like be informed, be engaged, but don't freak out.
Exactly. It's about taking action but not losing our heads.
Makes sense. So where do we go from here? It feels like we've only scratched the surface of this whole thing.
Oh, we've got one more part to go. We've talked about the what and the why, but now it's time to talk about the so what. What are the long-term consequences of this declaration, even if it gets overturned? What does it mean for the U.S. Mexico relationship? And what does it tell us about the future of democracy itself?
Ooh, now those are some juicy questions. Can't wait to unpack those in part 3. Okay, so we're back, and I gotta say, my head is still spinning from all this talk about national emergencies and executive power and legal battles.
Yeah, it's a lot to process.
It really is.
Yeah.
But I feel like we're starting to get a handle on things, at least a little bit.
I think so. And even if this specific declaration gets blocked by the courts, the effects are going to be felt for a long time.
Okay, so let's talk about that. What kind of long-term consequences are we looking at?
Well, one big concern is the precedent this sets, right? Like, if this is allowed, it basically gives future presidents a roadmap for bypassing Congress whenever they want to do something controversial.
So it's not just about Trump and the border wall.
No, it's bigger than that. It's about the balance of power in our government.
Like, what if a president decided to declare a national emergency to ban a certain religion?
Exactly. Or to seize private property. Or to basically do whatever they want without any checks and balances.
That's kind of scary.
It is. And it raises some fundamental questions about what kind of country we want to be, right? Like, do we want to live in a place where one person has that much power?
Okay, so that's the domestic side of things. What about U.S. Mexico relations? What kind of damage has this done?
Well, it's definitely created a lot of tension, right? Mexico feels like they're being used as a scapegoat, and that's not a good basis for a healthy relationship.
Yeah, it's like that saying, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar.
Exactly. And we need Mexico's cooperation to deal with issues like migration and drug trafficking.
So alienating them is not exactly a smart move.
No, not at all. It's like we're shooting ourselves in the foot.
And it's not just about practical things either, right? There's a symbolic element to this too.
Absolutely. The U.S.-Mexico relationship is complex. It's got a long history. There are deep cultural ties. And this declaration sends a message that we don't really value that partnership.
It's like we're building a wall, not just physically, but emotionally and diplomatically.
I think that's a good way to put it. And speaking of walls, this whole situation has really highlighted the divisions within our own country, too.
Yeah, it feels like everyone's picked a side and they're digging in their heels.
And that's dangerous because it makes it really hard to have a productive conversation about these issues.
Like, how can we find solutions if we can't even talk to each other?
Right. And I think the key is to start by listening. to really try to understand where the other side is coming from, what their concerns are, what experiences have shaped their views.
So empathy, basically.
Exactly. And recognizing that even on something as complex as immigration, there are good people on all sides who want what's best for the country.
Yeah, we may disagree on the how, but we can at least agree on the why.
Right. And that's a good starting point.
It is. So after this deep dive, what do we do now? What's the next step?
Well, the most important thing is to stay engaged, right? This issue isn't going away, and it's going to continue to affect our lives. So stay informed, talk to your friends and family, contact your elected officials, and don't be afraid to ask tough questions.
I like that. Stay curious, stay critical, and stay engaged.
Exactly.
Well, that was a lot to take in, but I feel like we covered a lot of ground, and I hope our listeners feel a little more informed about this whole national emergency situation.
Me too.
And as always, we encourage you to keep learning, keep exploring, and keep those critical thinking skills sharp.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Yep.